My parents threw me out when I was 14 because of my poor grades. Now I'm earning millions. I remember the day it happened, but I still can't figure out why it took me so long to see it coming. I wasn't dumb. At least, I didn't think I was. But the truth is, school was never my thing. I hated it. Every day felt like dragging myself through an endless maze of books and rules that didn't make sense to me. And my parents, they hated that I hated it. So, the pressure kept mounting. Every report card felt like a bullet to my chest, and they were always so goddamn disappointed. The grades kept dropping, and the lectures kept coming. "You're better than this," they'd say. "Why can't you just try harder?" What they didn't get is that it wasn't about trying harder. It was about the fact that I just didn't care. And maybe that was the problem. I wasn't like my older brother. I wasn't like my cousin, who seemed to have the world figured out at 16. I didn't want to be the top student. I didn't even want to be a student at all. But no one got that. Not even me. The day they threw me out, it was like the final chord had been struck in a song I never even wanted to hear. One more failed test. One more argument about how I wasn't meeting their expectations. And then it happened. I was sitting in my room trying to focus on some homework I couldn't care less about when my dad walked in. He didn't even knock, just stormed right in, red-faced, and slammed the report card on my desk. "Look at this!" "Just look at it," he shouted, pointing at the letter. My mom was behind him, silent, but I could feel her eyes on me. I didn't look at the paper. I already knew what it said. "Why can't you just try?" he kept saying. "You know you're capable of better. What the hell is wrong with you?" I didn't say anything. I just sat there, the same way I always did when they went off like this. I guess they thought the silence meant guilt. But it didn't. It just meant I was done. Done pretending to care. Then came the part that still makes me sick to think about. My mom spoke up, barely above a whisper. "Maybe it's time we let you figure this out on your own." And just like that, the air in the room shifted. The word own hung between us like a threat. And I felt it. "You're 16 and you're still failing your classes. We've given you everything and this is how you repay us?" My dad's voice cracked. I'd never heard him sound so weak before. "Get out," my mom said. Her voice wasn't cracking, though. It was steady, cold. It took a moment for the words to sink in. I think my brain refused to believe it. "Get out?" I asked, trying to find some sign of the person who'd raised me, who'd given me every material thing I could ever want. But there was nothing there. They had nothing left to give me. I stood up slowly, still not understanding what was happening. My dad just turned his back on me and walked out of the room. I think he thought I was going to protest or beg, but I didn't. My mom gave me one last cold look before she followed him out of the room. I didn't have a backpack. I didn't have anything. I just stood there, alone, trying to understand how my life had turned into this. They didn't even care enough to help me pack. It wasn't even about the grades anymore. It was about me being a disappointment. To them, I was a failure who wasn't worth investing in anymore. I walked out of that house with nothing but my phone and the clothes on my back. My feet barely touched the ground as I went down the front steps. I had no plan. I didn't even know where to go. My world was collapsing, and I didn't know who to turn to. I wandered the streets for hours. It was getting dark, and I realized I had no place to stay. I wasn't going back to my parents. There was no way I was walking back through that door. I called my friend, but she wasn't answering. The world felt so small, so empty. That night, I slept in an alley behind a convenience store. I didn't sleep much. I kept thinking about my parents and how easily they had tossed me away. But what hurt the most was how easily I'd let it happen. How easily I'd let them turn their backs on me. But even in that miserable little spot in the world, something clicked. Maybe it wasn't about them anymore. Maybe it was time to stop relying on anyone else to make my life work. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their validation. I just needed to get my shit together and figure out a way to survive. It was the first step towards something bigger. But I didn't know that yet. I just knew I couldn't go back to the life I had before. And maybe that was the best thing to happen to me. It took a while, but I got there. It wasn't about the money, not really. At least, not in the way I thought it would be. I thought if I could make enough, if I could show them that I wasn't a failure, that I could pull myself up, they'd see me differently. But that never came. And the longer I went without their approval, the more I realized how little their opinion mattered. In the end, I didn't need them to be successful. I didn't need them at all. The money came fast, though, faster than I expected. It was like a snowball rolling downhill, picking up speed. And all of a sudden, I was making more than I ever dreamed of. And you know what? It wasn't that great. People think money solves everything. Hell, I thought it would too. But there was always something missing. No matter how much I had, no matter how many things I bought or experiences I had, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still just missing something. I wasn't sure what it was, but I knew it wasn't going to be fixed with another luxury car or a bigger apartment. I'd be lying if I said the first time I went to the bank and saw the balance in my account didn't feel good. It did. It felt like I was finally doing something right. But over time, I started to wonder why I was chasing something that never seemed to fill the gap inside of me. I bought a condo in the city. It wasn't the nicest place, but it was mine. I furnished it with all the things I thought would make it feel like a home. It didn't. The TV was too big, the couch too fancy. I couldn't fill the space with things. I couldn't fill the silence with shit that didn't matter. I tried to keep my head above water, working nonstop, running my side business, flipping items, starting new ventures. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. At least, that's what people would have said if they looked at me from the outside. I'd gotten everything I thought I wanted. But every time I thought about my parents, it twisted something inside me. They were still living in their house, still doing everything the way they'd always done it. And I wasn't even sure if they ever noticed. They never reached out, never said anything about how I was doing. And every time I saw someone post about their parents being proud of them, I felt like shit. I didn't feel free. I felt hollow. Then one day, out of the blue, I get a letter. A letter from my mom. I could feel the tension in my chest as I held the envelope. I wasn't sure if I wanted to open it. What was there to say? They weren't my family anymore. They had no right to apologize, to try and make things better. But I opened it anyway. It was short, too short. I know we've made mistakes. I don't know if you can ever forgive us, but I want you to know that we're proud of you. I stared at it for a while. Proud of me? They didn't even know me anymore. But that was it. The apology. The attempt to fix everything. And it felt like nothing. A letter. A pathetic, empty gesture that didn't mean a damn thing. I could have sent something back. I could have told them everything I'd done and how I didn't need them. I could have made them feel bad, made them see how little their opinion mattered. But I didn't. Instead, I threw it in the trash. The truth is, I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need them to tell me I was worth anything. I had spent too many years trying to live up to their expectations, and in the end, none of it mattered. I wasn't trying to prove anything to them anymore. I wasn't sure where this path would take me. I wasn't sure if it would be any easier or better than it had been. But I knew I was done running. Done pretending to be someone I wasn't, just to please people who wouldn't have done the same for me. And that was the start of something new. A life I could own, without anyone else's permission or expectations. But I still couldn't shake that feeling of emptiness. Money couldn't fix it. Success couldn't fill the void. Maybe that's the hardest part of all. I was no longer the kid I used to be, the one who needed love and validation. I didn't need them. But in some twisted way, I still missed the idea of family. Maybe that's what it really came down to in the end. I never got to be a kid, never got to be what they wanted me to be, but now I had everything I wanted. And I was still missing something. It wasn't a victory, but it was mine. It's funny how quickly desperation can turn into something useful. I didn't have much, just a few $100 in my savings account and a ton of confusion in my head, but it was enough to start figuring things out. For the first time in my life, I had no one to depend on. I wasn't being coddled or carried through the days. No one to blame but myself for everything that had gone wrong. I had no one but me. I stayed in that alley for 2 more nights. I wasn't about to go to a shelter. I couldn't stand the thought of being in a place full of strangers, full of people who might judge me or pity me. It was bad enough that I was alone, but the last thing I needed was to feel sorry for myself. I wasn't going to be one of those people. I stayed out of school. I had no address to give them, and frankly, I didn't care. What was the point of school when I was already out of the game? I didn't let myself wallow, though. I started looking for ways to make money. I thought about everything I'd learned from my dad, his hustle, his business dealings. But I knew I didn't have any of his skills. I had to figure out something else. That's when I started selling things online. Anything I could find in pawn shops, in the streets, even things people threw away. I didn't care what it was. I started to realize that the world didn't care what kind of person you were. It didn't matter if you were rich, poor, smart, dumb. If you could hustle, you could survive. And I wasn't going to let myself be one of those who ended up stuck in the system. I sold stuff I didn't even want. Some days, I felt like I was giving away parts of myself just to stay afloat. But it worked. The money came in. And with it, I started to build a life that was mine. But it wasn't easy. It wasn't like the world rolled out the red carpet for me just because I wanted it. I had to fight for every single dollar. And the more money I made, the more I realized how much of my old life had been a lie. How much of what I thought I knew about success had been based on people who didn't even care about me. I was getting better at this. I was learning how to negotiate, how to sell, how to flip things for more money than I paid. And it felt good. It felt like power, something I hadn't had in a long time. But even as I was climbing, my parents were still there in the back of my mind, pulling at my thoughts. It was stupid, but I still missed them. It wasn't that I wanted them back. I was never going to go crawling back to them. But every time I made a breakthrough, I thought about how they dismissed me. And it hurt. Not because I wanted their approval, but because deep down, I still needed something from them that I couldn't quite put my finger on. But they didn't care about me anymore. That much was clear. They were living their perfect little lives, moving on without me, pretending like nothing ever happened. One day, out of nowhere, I get a call from my mom. It was weird. I hadn't heard from her since the day they kicked me out. The number flashed on my screen, and for a second, I thought about ignoring it. But something in me, maybe curiosity, made me pick up. "Hello?" I said, not bothering to mask the annoyance in my voice. "How are you?" she asked, like it was just a normal question, like we hadn't been torn apart by the very things she never understood about me. "I'm fine," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why are you calling?" "I know things have been difficult," she said, sounding like she actually cared. "We just wanted to see if you're okay." "Okay?" "You kicked me out. You threw me out, Mom, and now you're calling to see if I'm okay?" My voice cracked, and I hated myself for it. "You don't get to do that." There was a pause on the other end, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to beg for their forgiveness. I wasn't going to let them twist this into some story where I was the one who was wrong. They didn't even deserve to be in my life anymore. "I just wanted to apologize," she said, like those words would fix everything. "You were always such a disappointment to us, but we never meant for it to go this far. We just wanted you to try harder." "Try harder?" I asked, laughing bitterly. "You want me to try harder? It's too late for that. You had your chance. You made your choice. Don't pretend you're concerned now." My mom didn't say anything after that. The line went quiet. I hung up. That was the moment I knew for sure. There was no going back. There was no fixing this. No coming together for the sake of family. They didn't want me, and I didn't need them anymore. It wasn't some grand revelation, though. It wasn't the moment I found peace. It was just the harsh truth that I'd learned the hard way. My family wasn't going to be the safety net I thought they were. And I wasn't going to crawl back, begging for scraps of affection. But now I had something better. I had control, and control, for the first time in my life, felt fucking good.